Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia. For today, we're going to be jumping into the session of Epic 7. Now today we have something a little bit different for you guys, and it's going to be an account review, which means I'm going to be going through all of the units that I have in my rosters that are built, and so you can see what sets I'm using on them, what their builds are, what gear quality I'm using, and all that good stuff for you to potentially reference, or if you have a friend who's trying to build a specific unit that you see that's interesting, then you can recommend this video to them as well. This is really just to help you guys create some sort of benchmarks for how you want to progress in the game. I know that there are a lot of top tier players out there who, make their units publicly known, but because they're, top tier players or whales and all that good stuff, some of their gear, some of their builds are kind of unrealistic and harder for, someone who's starting out, someone who's in the mid game to kind of strive for and achieve, right? They're good benchmarks to work towards, but if you want something a little bit more reasonable, realistic in the meantime, well, this is the video for you. Okay, if you ever need a timestamp to any particular unit and you're interested in that instead of wanting to watch the whole video, timestamps are going to be in the pinned comment section and in the description down below, so please go check that out, find the unit you want, skip to that time, and then you can go there. Okay, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to hop into my heroes right here, and there we go. We have my Ken starting off. So Ken is a unit I really like using. I've been tweaking his gear on and off a lot. He was on a speed build, he was on a more bulky, slower build, but in the end I decided to go for a little in-betweenish, kind of a bruisery build. So +9 in terms of molas, mostly to get the important effects on his skill enhancements. And as you can see, his attack is pretty decent, right, for Ken, because his damage mostly scales from HP. So his HP could be a little higher, but it's okay where it is, almost 21,000. His defense is also 1,100, so it's not too bad. His speed at 185 is actually really good. I like that speed. And his crit chance and crit damage are okay for bruisers. I would like to optimize him a little bit more HP, more defense, right? But as of right now, the gear just doesn't allow it. As you can see, that helmet is really, really bad. It doesn't have any HP or anything like that there, so I could definitely use improvements. But as of right now, I am focusing on a few other units, and I'll revisit him when I get some pieces that might better fit him. He's on Draco Plate as of right now. Now, typically, I do use him on Draco Plate because I usually run him with a healer. But in cases like RTA where I don't always bring a healer in and I'm drafting, I might switch him off to Sigurd's Scythe. So that's something to keep in mind. Alright, so yeah, that's my Ken, fairly solid. I like him. Soul here is really just for World Boss. I don't use him for anything else. He carried me through the early game though, so that's cool. Okay, so here we go. Lilias. Lilias is a unit that I've been tweaking a few pieces here and there, mostly to try to optimize some of her stat lines a little bit. But she's +6 in terms of Mola on her S2 and S3, mostly for the one-turn cooldowns, and in the case of her S2, just maxed out so that she can provoke the enemy. Looking at her stats here, she's really built as a support unit, nowhere close to anything offensive. So 1,200 defense, 20,000 HP. She's really just here to proc dual attacks to provoke the enemy units that are troublesome and to kind of cleanse any debuffs that are on my team. 215 speed is actually pretty good for Lilias, mostly because I want her to be slower than most dizzies out there, right? Even counter set dizzies that tend to be a little bit faster, they're around like 200 something speed, right? 220-ish speed. So I like to be slower than that, so if they try to cripple my team, I can always cleanse afterwards. Same with slower Basars. You might see slower Basars around like the 220, 230 range instead of like the 260s or whatever, on immunity and all that good stuff. So Lilias is there to kind of counteract those units, and I don't want to make her too fast because if she goes before them, then you're kind of screwed, right? So yeah, looking at her stat lines, I would like to get her more effectiveness, a little bit more HP, but other than that, she works, right? You can tell by the gear, what kind of a piece is this, right? So I'm kind of tossing some leftover pieces of gear at her, and she does her job. She's on Adamant Shield as of right now. Now, sometimes I switch her off to Aureus if I'm against a really AoE heavy team, but for the most part, Adamant Shield has been putting in work. Okay, so moving on here, we have, oh yes, my Melissa. So +15 Melissa, I +15'd her out of the gate in terms of her banner. She is an absolute beast. of a unit. And if any of you guys have been watching my videos in chronological order, you'll know that Melissa is just destroying in Guild Wars, right? So an absolute amazing unit. I used to use her against Arbiter Vildred as well, where she would just S3 into Arbiter Vildred, kill him, you get an extra turn with S2, and then you kill him again. What's an Arby, right? What's an Arby? So looking at her stat lines here, 4,400 something attack, not too bad. It could be higher, but as of right now, a lot of my attack pieces are on the next unit, which is my Researcher Carrot. So she needs 100% crit chance. She has to, no matter what, right? Whether you're going for a fast build or a slow build, she needs 100% crit chance in order to land that S3 to proc the S2. Now, as you can probably tell, hey, these pieces of gear are probably not the best, right? 29% effectiveness on this boot, really? You have a level 70 necklace here, really? And yeah, she works. The good thing about her is that she really just needs a lot of attack, okay? A little bit of effectiveness is good for landing her curse debuff, but other than that, I mean, she has all the stats she needs. Some people like to build a faster Melissa. I prefer just having a slow one because I usually just push up with Faithless Lidica, right? As long as you have someone who has a CR push, she should be fine at a slower speed. Now, she's always running Portrait of the Saviors. I like to put my plus 31s on her because it ensures that I can deal the most amount of damage possible, especially if she lands a curse. If you use an S2 into someone else, that curse damage is going to be proportional to the amount of damage you do to the other units. So the more damage you do, the better it is. But yeah, so she can definitely use gear improvements, but as of right now, she works, right? Okay, so for the next unit, the unit I was talking about earlier, Researcher Carrot, yeah, that's right. So she is plus 15, she is self-imprinted with herself, SSS, of course, being a 3-star. It is fantastic. Now let me tell you, Researcher Carrot is one of my favorite units in the game. You can probably tell because she is my representative avatar. Now, Carrot here is rocking over 4,700 attack, 1,100 defense, and 10,000 HP. Okay, she has a respectable speed of 160, and crit chance, crit damage doesn't matter. She has a little bit of effectiveness. You don't need too much on her because she's not really going to be landing debuffs on 150% effect resistance Ruels and stuff, right? Your stats need to go to attack and needs to go to bulk, so you're going to be sacrificing stats in other places. But looking at her gear here, as you can see, I'm pretty much giving her the substats where they just have a ton of attack, right? Except chest pieces, they can't get attack substats. And yeah, she has attack necklace, attack ring, attack boots. But one thing that I really emphasize when you're building a carrot is she needs bulk, right? So she's running Proof of Valor here. She's running my single copy Proof of Valor, my other one's on General Purrgis, but she needs the bulk. She needs to be able to stay alive. Now, you might be wondering, oh, well, 1,100 defense and 10,000 HP is not that great, and it isn't, but if you factor in Flame Barrier, that's going to be a very chunky barrier that your opponent has to go through, especially if she gets an attack buff or a greater attack buff, because it scales off of her attack stat. So she's basically going to be getting a pseudo heal every turn, which is why you don't want her super slow. 160 speed's respectable. She's going to cycle enough turns that she's going to be able to recycle and refresh her Flame Barrier, because it can only reactivate after she's taken a turn, okay? So Researcher Carrot, very bulky. As you can, if you guys remember from the Guild War where she got triple countered by an Emil Ken, by a Charles, and by a Ravi, she would have survived the triple counter from all three of those units. It's just that Charles ended up critting her twice and then killing her. So if Charles actually missed there, she would have survived 3 procs of counterattacks in a row. So she's very bulky, she's very good. If anything, I would like to raise her attack to 5,000 something, but that's kind of pushing it, right? And that you need some insane gear quality in order to be able to do that. I might be able to achieve somewhat close to it if I, end up tier 90ing some of these pieces, which I do plan on doing sometime in the future, but as of right now, not enough gold. Okay, so yeah. Spend a lot of time on Researcher Carrot, but that's because I absolutely love her. She's also a very budget character, so if you want someone who's a DPS, who's cute, who's really good in Guild Wars and PvE and all this other stuff, she's definitely someone to look into. Alright, next off we have a support character here. We have Achates, my absolute favorite healer in the game. She is so good, and she's low investment too. All you need is the -1 cooldown on her S3, and yeah, that's pretty much all. So she's rocking a pretty healthy amount of defense, almost 1,700 defense, 16,000 HP, 200 speed, and none of the other stats matter, except a little bit of effect resistance, right? 80-something%. Now, typically I like to be closer to a 150% effect resistance, but because of her exclusive equipment, as you can see, her Curing Prayer, if you use her S3, it increases the effect resistance of the caster for 2 turns, and the effect resistance buff gives you a 50% effect resistance, so really she's around like 130 plus effect resistance, which is pretty good. And she's always going to have this because it's a 2-turn cooldown, it's a 2-turn buff. But what you can do is after you use your S3, you use your S2 on yourself, it resets your S3 essentially because it gives you a -1 turn cooldown on it. And at the end of your turn, it does a -1 turn cooldown too. So the next turn, you're going to have Curing Prayer up again. So you're never going to lose that effect resistance buff as long as you keep cycling her skills. So you can kind of skimp out on a little bit of effect resistance if you would like. But I still recommend having a bit of it, you know, at least 70%, right? So you can at least get 120% effect resistance with her buff. But anyway, going into her gear here, mostly just health, speed, effect resistance, some defense here and there. She is running an HP neck, and she's running a defense ring with a bit of speed, of course. Now, she is definitely used to counter Basars. You bring her and Lilias, and I mean, if Basar ends up hitting both, penetrating immunities, penetrating effect resistance, like just absolutely demolishing your team, then I guess he deserves to win at that point, right? There's nothing you can do about it. But she is a very nice fail-safe with Lilias in order to counter Basars. I use Rod of Amaryllis on her. It's really good, especially because if you use her S2 on herself, typically that skill won't be healing anybody else, but with a Rod of Amaryllis, it does help sustain your other heroes while she's cycling her own skills. So that's why I recommend that. And yeah, there we go. That's my Achates. She's very, very good. She has probably the best gear out of all my healers as of right now. So highly recommend you build her, especially if you're looking for someone to cleanse. All right, we have my Luna here. I mean, I'll flash this on the screen real quick. I don't really use her for anything. She is definitely not holding any important gear. It's all spare gear. She's really here for World Boss as of right now, and I sometimes bring her into raid, but yeah, I don't really use my Luna at all, unfortunately. But for someone who I do use, for Wyvern especially, is Karin. So, Karin here is absolutely fantastic. Now, she doesn't need any Molagoras. I did this a long time ago. She has a -1 turn cooldown here, and she has a self-imprint for crit chance, okay? So, looking here, she's rocking a destruction set, but she's actually has quite a bit of speed because these pieces rolled like garbage, and they got a bunch of speed on them. Okay, so you see 14 speed on this, right? You had 9 speed up here. We have 7 speed here. So we're just running a hit set, destruction set, mostly because of the fact that I need her to be able to debuff the Wyvern. As you can see on her stats, you know, respectable attack, respectable crit damage, actually pretty good crit damage, and a good amount of speed. Her HP and defense don't really matter because Wyvern only targets the frontline unit if he has more than 2 debuffs, 2 debuffs or more. Okay, so not really worried about her getting hit. Now, her crit chance, you might be wondering, okay, plus 15 for the what is it called? Elemental advantage against the Wyvern, right? So it's not going to be 100% crit chance. I'm aware of that. It's because I am missing just 1 imprint here. 1 imprint for that extra little bit of crit chance. So I am waiting for another Karin to pop up. I am going to get her from the, what is it called? The story pass, whatever it is, for the summer side story. So we're going to be getting that, and she's going to reach that 85% crit chance that she needs in order to ensure that she 100% crits the Wyvern. Okay, and she does have over 70% effectiveness, which is pretty good threshold to reach, especially for PvE units. And, oh, for those of you wondering, I am using a single copy of Torn Sleeve, so 75% chance to inflict bleed, which is pretty good because Karin does get multiple turns with her S2 into an S1 or S3, so she's going to be able to inflict pretty decent amount of bleeds onto the Wyvern to act as debuffs. Alright, so there we go, purely a PvE unit. And here we go, Seaside Bellona is next. Now, right now she's on Daydream Joker, but that's because I do use her in Wyvern as well. I switch her over to Drink when I do go for PvP. So she's plus 15, definitely worth it. Now, if you look at her stat line, she's actually pretty good in terms of damage. Now, she's lacking in bulk because I don't use her on defense teams anymore. I pretty much only use her on offensive teams, and sometimes bring her into RTA if I really need to. But she's very squishy. She has a lot of attack, a lot of crit damage. She has decent effectiveness because I do use her in PvE, and her speed is abysmal. Now, I wish I had immunity for her, but I don't. But that's okay, because I usually run her alongside like Crimson Armins, so that's the reason for that. And I don't have enough immunity pieces as of right now. So as you can see, we're running a lot of crit damage on my substats, right? There's crit damage galore on these substats, and that's because I've actually opted to run for a crit chance necklace, right? So these subs, like, if you look at her stats, you'd be like, oh, well, these, it doesn't seem that great, until you realize it's on a crit chance necklace, right? So this is actually pretty good. It's just a random hit set piece. Didn't even roll that well, but having crit chance as a necklace, if you have enough crit damage substats, like this is a trash piece, right? Except for the like almost 30% crit damage here. Pretty much a trash piece, but it redeems itself in terms of that one stat line. And yeah, so a lot of crit damage on all my subs, which is why I'm still able to reach 222% or 272% with a crit chance necklace. She, again, like I mentioned earlier, she's on Daydream Joker for the Wyvern, but of course I switch it to Drink whenever I do PvP. And yeah, that's my Seaside Bellona. I pretty much only use her on offense, sometimes in Arena too. But other than that, she is pretty solid. If anything, I really do want my goal to be a bruiser build, so I want her to be, you know, like 1,200 or 1,400 defense, you know, 13,000 to 15,000 HP, and then, you know, no speed, on immunity set, could lower her attack maybe a little bit, or crit damage by a lot and increase her attack to about 4,000, and then just run Drink. So I would like a bruisery Drink build on her, but as of right now, that's unattainable. But we'll see when we get more pieces down the line. Okay, so moving on, we have my Dizzy. So Dizzy here is really only rocking Molas in her S2 and S3 for the -1 cooldowns. I use her on my Guild War defense team because she's actually really good with Lidica and Arbiter Vildred. Because the fact that she can inflict a bunch of debuffs on the opponent, cripple them, and then Arbiter Vildred can just go ham. So these are her stats right here. I would like her defense and HP to be higher, definitely throwing that out there. 1,100 defense is okay, and 15,000 attack is right? I'd like her to be like 18,000 HP with 1,400 defense, or something like that. But in order to maintain her effectiveness here, I am running a speed effectiveness build. She is able to debuff through very strong effect resistance healers like Ruele's, May Chloe's, and all that stuff. So that's the reason why I keep her on this, is to cripple those units as well. It also helps her proc her Abyssal Crown in terms of landing the actual stuns, because it is impacted by effectiveness. I know some people opt to go for counter builds, but as of right now, I don't have enough counter pieces, and I don't farm Banshee. So as we can see here, yeah, pretty solid. There are definitely places where I can improve my gear, such as this like necklace. It's not even a 60% health necklace, but it is what I have on hand at the moment, and I don't really have. I'm really lacking like HP percent necks as of right now. So yeah, this is Dizzy's artifact, Abyssal Crown. So obviously you want to just inflict a bunch of stuns on your opponent and just cripple them, right? Fun stuff. Alright, so there we go. That's pretty much Dizzy, pretty straightforward. You've probably seen like 1,000 Dizzies that are pretty much almost identical to this one. So we're just going to keep moving on. Alright, next up we have Luluca. Now, she's been actually on and off in terms of the type of gear I give her. She is Mola'd, mostly for the -1 turn cooldown there. Probably shouldn't have done that. And yeah, the effect chance on her S3, which is actually pretty good. I will have to say, it is actually pretty good. Oh yeah, she is S imprinted, but that's only because she has been spooking me so many times in the daily free summons. Keep getting Luluca, so I end up building her because she is a pretty good hero, especially after her buffs. So here are her stats here. She is actually pretty tanky, 10,000 HP, 1,200 defense, not too shabby, respectable attack with pretty good crit chance as well. Her crit damage is low, but honestly, it doesn't really matter because she is a support unit. Her effectiveness now is something I really do want to work on, but as of right now, I just don't have enough effectiveness rings for her. Here are her stats right here for her substats, for her gear. Now, again, like you see like this type of helmet here, absolute garbage helmet, but hey, it works on a unit that I use exclusively for PvE. She's a unit I only take into raids, pretty much, hell raids and normal raids. She's good morale, she is a very strong debuffer, and a good support unit. Her defense breaks help set up for a lot of easy kills on the bosses, so that's why she's here. Now, her EE is actually not optimized either. I can get a little bit more effectiveness on this as well, but I do prefer the S3 one, where it has a 75% chance to decrease attack as well for 2 turns, on top of her S3, which has an 85% chance to decrease defense. Her artifact is pretty good. Moonlight Bloom here gives her that extra crit chance, so she's 100%. This also is used to help support my Lorina, which I also use in my Hell Raid comps with my Luluca. So this just helps her crit all the bosses and just absolutely decimate them. So pretty much a support unit at this point. She's not meant to do much damage. Alright, so there we go, that's Luluca. Next off, we have my Montmorancy. Now, Montmorancy has kind of fallen from grace for me. I've definitely been using Achates way more, and now that I have Ruele, I'm using Ruele as well. But Montmorancy still definitely has her spots, right? Definitely shines against debuff comps like Disease and all those other things that you see in Guild Wars. She is a very strong unit. Now, she is plus 15, obviously, because she's a 3-star, which means it's pretty much free with Stigma to do that. And she is imprinted for effect resistance. Now, as you can see here, her stat line's actually pretty solid, right? 1400 defense with 18,000 HP at 185 speed. It's pretty good. And her effect resistance at around 150. So she is, because she has high effect resistance, you don't really need immunity. Especially because Montmorancy is just such a tanky unit in terms of mitigating debuffers. All of her gear here is really kind of based on effect resistance, right? You can see here just a bit of speed, bit of effect resistance. Don't really care about flat stats and all that other stuff. She could be a bit more optimized, but as of right now, she is completely fine. Now, I do recommend you run her on Rod of Amaryllis, but I have her on Magaraha's Tome because it works for me, right? It works for the team comps I bring her into, because usually I bring her into the more debuff heavy ones where I need to cycle cleanses really fast, and this helps her do it. Magaraha's Tome also, I don't need Rod of Amaryllis for Hell Raids. I do bring her in for Hell Raids too. So Magaraha's Tome just helps cleanse the debuffs, especially for bosses like Carcanus, who, if you're debuffed and you attack him, you're going to be very crippled. So Magaraha's Tome is what works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. Rod of Amaryllis, definitely the safer bet for PvP. Alright, so you've probably seen a million Montmorancys, so we're going to keep moving on. Next off, Angelica is just on a World Boss build. She is nothing special. I kind of stripped her gear to put onto Ruele and other units. Alright, so moving on, we have Mercenary Helga, another 3-star unit. As you can see, I really love my specialty changes. So, she is SSS imprinted for speed, which is really good. Speed imprints on units is very strong. So, she is plus 15 as always with all of my other 3-star units, and here are her stats. So, she's not rocking a lot of attack, not rocking a lot of crit chance or crit damage, right? Crit chance can be about 50%. She has a skill like Cdom, where it's actually kind of a passive. If she's at full health at the start of her turn, she gets a crit chance buff, so gives 50% more crit chance. So she's going to be able to crit no matter what, essentially, as long as she starts her turn with full health. And I typically bring her with a healer to help sustain her as well. She is a earth tank, at least for me and how I play with her. As you can see, she has 1,500 defense and almost 17,000 HP with 195 speed. So she is very fast. She is meant to be a support unit. Go first, right? Give your team a really nice buff with her S3, and then you go from there. Her S3 gives her the whole team an attack buff and an effectiveness buff, which gives 50% effectiveness. So adding that onto what she has now, that's 100 plus effectiveness. That's going to be able to debuff a lot of units. And she has a defense break on her S1 and her S2, so she is really good in terms of support. Highly recommend you build her. She is very underrated. I hear a lot of people say, she's not really worth it, she looks underwhelming. But once you use her, like even at these offensive stats here, which are not offensive at all, she is able to absolutely destroy units, right? And one artifact I really like using on her, especially when she's on a tanky build, is El's Fist, because as health decreases, your attack and speed increase by a ton. So she's able to start cycling like crazy, and she gets a nice boost to her attack as well. And because she's pretty much always going to crit as long as she's at full HP, it's going to help with that little bit of crit damage too. Alright, so there we go. That's my Helga. Highly recommend you guys build her. I mean, she's free anyways, right? Specialty change units are very powerful and very free. You only need Stigma. No Molagoras needed. Okay, next off we have the Queen of Guild Wars, Yufine, who's able to one-shot all of my enemies. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, Yufine is at plus 14 Mola, not plus 15, mostly because you don't really need that extra 5% effect chance there. It's not really a huge deal, so I saved the Molas there, don't need it, but her S1 and her S3 are godly, and they will do a ton of damage, especially with her exclusive equipment here, where she is able to get an increased 30% more damage when using her S1, which is why she is so potent in PvP. Now, what I have here is a complete offensive build with 4,500 attack. Her defense is low, but her HP is respectable at 12,000 here. Very slow build because I usually bring her with a tank like Crimson Armin that provides her protection until it's her turn. And, you know, respectable crit chance, very good crit damage for her in terms of ratio to attack and crit damage. Some people like to go for like 300 plus crit damage and like 4,000 attack, which is fine. It's just as of right now with the gear I have, I mean, she works perfectly fine, right? You guys see in the Guild War, she's able to one-shot pretty much every Charles out there, unless there's this ridiculous like mine. And yeah, she does her job. So, looking at her gear here, she's rocking the free like attack sets, right? This one's from a Venture set. You see the weapon was from the free login awards and stuff like that. So, she's very budget in order to build. Except for the Molagoras, of course, supplemented with a crit chance set, and then I also have a Hellcutter here. So Hellcutter, because she's so slow, she's able to stack up crit chance, and she's able to stack up attack. So when it's her turn, she's able to nuke like everything, and by the time it's her turn, she's gonna have 100% crit chance, right? So that's what I have for my Yufine. It works. She doesn't need effectiveness. I know she can silence on her S2, but it's really nothing. Strip and silence. Really, you only use her S2 to get the attack buff so that you can just go nuke more things on your subsequent turns. Right? So there's Yufine. I use her a lot in Guild Wars. Almost every Guild War I use to bring her just to one-shot everything, and she works fantastic. Alright, next off we have the king of everything in this game, Charles. Yeah, that's right. We have Charles here at plus 15. I love him so much. He's probably my favorite character in this entire game. I love him to death. He is absolutely amazing. Now, as you can see, he's one away from being fully imprinted, which I do want to get on him. I'm waiting for the next Unknown Slate to come out in the arena shop, and then I'm definitely going to be snagging that. So, what we have here is a very respectable attack for Charles, right? Because he has very low base attack. Almost 2,800 attack. We have 1,300 defense. Almost 18,000 HP. Almost no speed, but I'll get to that in a second. Almost 100% crit chance and very respectable crit damage as well. So the thing with Charles is he doesn't need effectiveness. Effect resistance, of course, he does not need. He's on immunity as of right now with a counter set. And because he's on counter and because he's running Elbrus Ritual Sword as his artifact, it means that he is going to be decimating everything, especially with this exclusive equipment where I've maxed this out at 14% additional attack, and it gives him an additional 10% chance of activating Smash when he uses his S1. So the S1 to S2 just became even stronger with this exclusive equipment, and if you don't have it, well, you better get it. Alright, so looking at his gear, now he's one of the few units that I've actually put some what is it called, tier 90 gear on. So he's running, you know, pretty decent stats here. These helmets and that chest piece came from the Hell Raid, so definitely recommend you go there for some pretty decent counter pieces, especially if you're like me and you don't really run Banshee for those other counter sets. So there we go. That's all of his substats there. He is one of the best units in the game, right? Hands down, he is used everywhere. I use him in RTA, I use him in Guild Wars, I use him in Hell Raids, I use him absolutely everywhere. Definitely, by far, like, at least top 3 favorite characters in the game. So, there you go. That's my Charles, and moving on, we have my Falconer Kluri. Yeah, that's right. Good old reliable Falconer Kluri. So, unfortunately, because since I got Lidica and built her, Falconer Kluri did lose a little bit of speed. As you can see, she's not even tier 90 on her boots, but she is plus 15 like every other 3-star specialty change hero, right? Self-imprinted for defense because she needs it because she's tank. She's a tank. She's tank. Yeah, she is tanky. So here we go with her stats here. Defense at almost 1700 defense. Really, really solid stat line. 15,000 HP. I could get that to be a little bit higher, but for what she does, she works just fine, which pretty much means tank Chairons and other fire units. Her speed is ridiculously high for Falconer Kluri, in my opinion, at least from most of the ones I see out there. She's rocking 253 speed. And she's on almost 90% effectiveness, right? So she is really, really solid in terms of being able to go first, provoke a unit that you think is going to be threatening, hopefully land a defense break as well, and then just slaughter that unit, right? I like to bring Falconer Kluri to PvP battles as a tank, but also to potentially defense break somebody to set up for a DPS one-shot. I also like using her to control other units that I know are going to be fast. If I know there's a Basar that's like 230, 240-ish speed, kind of in like the challenger range, sometimes I'll bring in Falconer Kluri to just go first, provoke him so he can't strip my team, and then go from there. That's if my Lidica is, getting caught up in a different Guild War battle. So there we go. Falconer Kluri, very solid, fairly easy to build too. I have Aureus here on her. It's a really good artifact for her, especially because I bring her mostly to tank, so she can mitigate some of the damage on my team, right? So next off, we have a unit that wasn't shown last time. We have Iseria here. I finally built her. No Molagoras on her, unfortunately. I do want to get some Molas into her for the -1 cooldown here and the -1 cooldown here, but that will have to wait for now. Looking here at her stats, she is fairly solid in terms of speed. 222 speed is, I think, about 10 more speed than my Tamarinne, which is what you want to mitigate the RNG of Tamarinne going before the Iseria. But Iseria is also really good in terms of using her with other units. Like she doesn't have to be paired with Tamarinne. She could be used to reset your DPS skills, your other support hero skills. She is really, really strong and very unique in that regard as well. So she's rocking pretty defensive stats, as you could tell. She's not really running any offensive ones. So 1,000 defense, almost 15,000 HP, 222 speed, doesn't need crit chance or crit damage. She does need effectiveness though. She's rocking 92%. Is not the best. I would like it to be much higher at like 150%, but as of right now, I don't have enough effectiveness percent rings for her. Currently, she's rocking Infinity Basket, not really the best artifact in terms of levels right now. I haven't leveled it up, but what it does do is it increases the dual attack damage, so 20% more damage from dual attacks, and I believe that's stagnant. That's always going to be 20%. The only thing you get from leveling this artifact is getting the dual attack chance up, but because Tamarinne always procs a dual attack with the person with the highest attack on your team, this is really good because it just ensures that they get 20% extra damage whenever Tamarinne does proc that dual attack. So it's pretty strong in that regard. I mean, Sacerdotanes is also a really good artifact for her if you want to use that as well. But yeah, purely a support unit. I really, really love her. She works really well. Tamarinne Iseria is a hardcore combo that you can use with any DPS to just nuke your opponent into oblivion. Alright, so moving on next, we have Roana. She hasn't changed from last time, so I'm going to really quickly go over her. She's Mola'd into her S2 and her S3, and I use her as an absolute beefy tank. So, as you can see, 2,300 defense, 17,000 HP, almost no speed. She doesn't need the speed. She's only there for her passive, really, for the heals, and she's rocking 125% effect resistance. So all of these pieces are just random defense and HP sets that I threw on her, and it works. As long as they have HP, defense, and effect resistance substats, you're good to go. So yeah, effect resistance ring to help her not get debuffed by Seaside Bellonas, and all that good stuff. Now, I do run her on Celestine. Some people like Touch of Rekos and all those other artifacts. You can use what you want on her. Idol's Cheer, right? Find what works. For me personally, Celestine works for me. So I've been using that. Do keep in mind that she doesn't have a cleanse in her kit, so if you are bringing her into a very debuff heavy team like Dizzy's and stuff like that, you might want to bring a Lilias or an Achates or someone else instead, because Roana is not really good for that. She is good for countering Seaside Bellonas, Charles, Mo Kens, Lilias, right? Very prominent heroes in PvP. She's pretty good for that. She's also a really good counter pick in RTA against those units as well, so that's something to keep in mind. Alright, so, yep, there we go. That's Roana. Hasn't really changed at all. Moving on, we have General Purrgis. So, I built this absolute monster of a unit, and pretty much all he needs is HP and defense. So if we look here, I've molded his S2 for that extra boost to his combat readiness. Same with his exclusive equipment. I chose the one that increases the combat readiness by additional 3%. This helps because I only really use him in Wyvern and Guild Wars. Right, so in Wyvern, when the Wyvern attacks him, going to push up all your DPS units so they can keep getting turns faster and faster. And in PvP, I use him as a light bait, so you know, ML Kens and all those other dark units are going to attack him, which in turn is going to boost up your units, either support or DPS. And you're going to get more turn cycling. You're going to probably overwhelm your opponent. The dual attack chance on his imprint is actually very, very good. Now, I could just switch it over to a concentration to help him tank a little bit better in Wyvern, but that dual attack chance actually helps quite a bit for finishing off Wyvern pretty quickly. So keeping him on that for now. So here we go, looking at his stats here. 1400 defense and 27,000 HP. I would like his speed to be much lower, but unfortunately, all the high HP rolls ended up on these speed set pieces, so I can't avoid that. His effect resistance used to be much higher, but I wanted him to get pushed back by Wyvern, so I kind of just took off those pieces and gave it to other units. As you can see here, pretty much giving him all defense and HP pieces. I mean, nothing here is extraordinary. It's just pieces that ended up rolling into defense, ended up rolling into HP, and I just slapped it on him. Yeah, so he does tend to die in Wyvern still. He'd probably die after 3 Wyvern turns, which is enough for me to pretty much kill Wyvern by then, but yeah, something to keep in mind. Even though he looks bulky, even though he's running Proof of Valor at a plus 24, he's still capable of dying, so something to keep in mind. Alright. Let's see. Next off, we have my Little Queen Charlotte. So again, another star from Guild Wars. So Little Queen Charlotte here is used to nuke a lot of my dark threats like ML Kens and things like that. As you can see, she's plus 15 Molad. I do like plus 15 Mola-ing a lot of my better units, or my favorite units at least. And I think min-maxing heroes that you use very often is a very smart thing to do. It's a good investment. So looking at her attack here, 3,500 attack, very, very solid, with 1,000 defense and almost 14,000 HP. Now, the only complaint I have here is I want her bulk to be higher. I want her to have at least 1,200 defense and at least 15,000 HP with higher speed. Her speed's still low, but that's okay. It's mitigated by her passive, which is okay. Now, her crit chance is good, and her crit damage is very solid, right? She doesn't need any other stats in terms of effectiveness and effect resistance. So, looking at her pieces here, you know, fairly solid all around. A lot of crit chance, as you can see on the substats on the helmet. A lot of crit chance on the substats in the necklace as well, because she definitely does need it. I would like her to be at 100%, but unfortunately, it's unachievable right now with what gear I have. She is running Durandal as of right now, but if I do need a nuke ML Kens, like if I'm going up against ML Kens in Guild Wars, you guys know I do switch her out to Portrait of the Saviors. Durandal is just a really good all-around artifact on her, like outside of wanting to nuke people. But yeah, it also helps give her a bit more turn cycling, which is pretty decent as well. Okay, yeah, and that's pretty much Little Queen Charlotte. Hasn't really changed since last time, so there we go. Now moving on, we have the one and the only Crimson Armin. So Crimson Armin is, well, she's plus 15 Molad. I use her a lot, right? Is it worth it? In my opinion, yeah, I use her in almost every Guild War. So she's been serving me very, very well. These Molas were definitely well worth the investment. And here are her stats. So 1,800 defense with 16,000 HP and over 200 speed, right? So she is very, very solid in terms of all her stats, and I am very happy with where she is. She has a bit of effectiveness, because as you guys know, I do like using her to provoke units, which is why I also max Mola her S1. And yeah, she's running a combination of HP neck, defense ring, and a speed boot. She's on immunity so that she doesn't get pushed back or anything like that, so she can put up her S3 safely, grants the whole team invincibility and immunity, so very solid. She's running Aureus because it synergizes very well with her S2, which is pretty much an adamant shield built into her kit, so she's basically an adamant and an Aureus at the same time, which is very solid. And yeah, that's pretty much Crimson Armin. I mean, there's not much that goes on with her, right? She's just very, very good all around. Next off, we have a new unit in my roster, and that's going to be Ruele. So, as you can tell, she's pretty much rocking the free HP set, right? Until you see her stats and you go, whoa, wait, what? Right, so she's very, very solid in terms of having pretty much not wasted stats, right? The reason why I went for the free HP set instead of like a speed set for the speed bonus is because I actually rolled quite decently on the speed while maintaining health and effect resistance and a bit of defense. So as you can see, 9 speed, 10 speed, 10 speed here, 8 speed. This was not a free HP set. This is a piece that I got on my own. 6 speed there and 12 speed there. So she had enough speed where it was actually a little bit higher. I think it was like 1 or 2 speed higher than if I got a speed set bonus on her. So I ended up just going with this instead, and it works out really well. She's on Water's Origin right now, so Water's Origin is really good for tanky healers, because if your opponent does, deal more than 20% of your max health as damage, like if they're trying to bring heavy DPS units against you, then you're going to be healing a little bit back, and you're going to be pushing yourself forward. And because my Ruele is kind of low on speed, I would like her to be higher in terms of speed. Like, that's pretty much my only complaint with her, is that she needs to be a little faster. But other than that, I mean, with Water's Origin, it really helps a lot in terms of cycling, and it helps her, cycle her cooldown, so she's able to revive more, she's able to heal more with her S2. Her only downside is she's a single target healer, so I usually bring her into guild wars against, single target damage dealers, so that if someone accidentally dies, I could just revive them. And she's probably the most broken unit in the entire game. People complain about Arbiter Vildred, but Ruele, like, if you can't kill her, you just lose, especially in RTA. So that's something to keep in mind. Alright, so there we go. That's Ruele. Fairly simple build, right? I don't have any molas in her at all. I use her without molas as of right now, but I definitely do need the -1 cooldown for S3, and that's pretty much it. So I'll do that sometime in the future. Alright, next off, we have Lorina. So for Lorina here, we have plus 15 as always. Specialty changed Lorina is very, very strong. In fact, if you're going to build somebody for Hell Raid, if you want to bring someone for Hell Raid, bring a defense breaker and bring Lorina, because she is going to one-shot like all the mini bosses. She's going to destroy the bosses. She is an insane unit. So I do wish I got more copies of her. That would be very nice, but as of right now, she's fine as she is. So here are her stats: over 4,000 attack. Her defensive stats don't really matter because you usually bring a healer with her to keep her nice and healthy. She is fairly squishy though. That's one complaint I have. I would like her to be more bulky, but she's mostly focused on offensive. She's rocking almost no speed, right? Crit chance is actually alright. It's pretty decent, and her crit damage is on the lower side, but if you see her passive on her S2, it actually mitigates this entirely, because she's going to get so many multipliers with her S2 passive every time she goes that she's going to reach incredible amounts of damage. So you'll need a little bit of crit damage on her, not a ton, like 220-ish, right? 225-ish or a little higher than that, that's fine. And she's going to be an absolute beast. She's rocking, some free gear here, right? The Adventurer's Set weapon, free attack gear helmet, Adventurer's Set attack piece. I think this was also a free necklace too. I don't remember from where, but it was free. Supplemented with a flat attack, right? Flat attack ring. But it did roll pretty decently in terms of substats, so I was like, oh, okay, fine. I'll use it on her because I only use her in PvP or PvE, so she doesn't need my best gear. And of course, the free boots as well. So very easy to build, very solid investment. Highly, highly recommend. I bring her to every single Hell Raid boss fight except for Queen. So she is a very, very good unit to have. She's on Daydream Joker as well, obviously, because she's PvE unit. This helps her destroy bosses even quicker because it helps stack up on her already insane damage. Alright, moving on, we're almost done with these units here. We have Dark Corvus. So, you guys don't like me using him in Guild Wars? Well, here he is. I did kind of downgrade some of his gear because of that, because I don't really use him in Guild Wars anymore. You will, well, I don't know when I'm going to post this video, but, you know, by the time this goes up, hopefully, I've pretty much stopped using him in Guild Wars except for the really difficult fights, but it's because I took off some of his gear and gave it to Ruele, right? Ruele wanted the effect resistance more than Dark Corvus did, especially because Dark Corvus is already on Strat Gauntlet, which gives him a bunch of effect resistance here, so it is very solid. Alright, so moving on, he is self-imprinted for 15% more health, which is very good for him, because his damage on his S3 pretty much just scales from the health. Damage dealt is only affected by caster's health, right? So, pretty much stack HP on him, and he'll be good. Now, I only max his S3, I didn't max his S2 or anything, because it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can always drag the battle long enough to get his cooldowns anyway, so getting cooldowns faster doesn't really help that much overall, at least in my experience. Okay, so with Dark Corvus, he's running the free HP sets here, so I'll just run through that, but he does have almost 1500 defense, almost 32,000 HP. His speed is really low. Now, you guys will notice if you paid attention to the last video, actually, I don't even know if he was in the last video, maybe he was, but his speed is lower, but that's because I pretty much figured out that, hey, I'm going to bring him with General Purrgis, and if everyone attacks General Purrgis, Dark Corvus is going to keep getting pushed up and up and up in terms of combat readiness, and so I don't really need the speed on him. General Purrgis helps him cycle his turn fast enough to the point where he's going to get his S3 fairly quickly. Alright, and he is rocking a bit of effect resistance as well, almost 100% there, plus the 48% here. He's pretty much sitting at 150% effect resistance, so he's going to be able to resist provokes, defense breaks, all the dangerous stuff that'll prevent him from doing his job, right? So there we go, very simplistic hero here, but gonna show you guys regardless. Alright, next off we have my scuffed ML Ken. I always say he's scuffed because he is. He's not that good, as you can see by his stats, but we'll get to that in just a second. So, if you look here, we have, you know, a few molas here and there, plus 10. I do want to plus 15 him, but as of right now, I don't have the gear for him yet, so really just kind of skimping out on the molas there for now. He's on immunity and attack set, so he's running almost 4,200 attack. His defense is low, it's only 1,000, and his HP is low, it's only 13,000. His speed is fine, it could be a little lower, but it's alright. I would like his crit chance to be higher, and his crit damage to be a little bit higher as well. But as of right now, his offensive stats are fine, it's just that he's too squishy. I want him to be near like 1,400 defense, I want him to be up to like 15,000 HP, right? I want him to be very tanky, but once you see the substats on my gear, you're gonna know why, right? There's no HP percent, no defense percent on this weapon, right? There's no, well, this thing rolled terribly, actually. It rolled into effectiveness twice, I think. But yeah, so you see the HP here, which is pretty good, but the attack and crit damage, it completely avoided that, which really sucked. His chest piece here, you know, not that great. I don't need the effect resistance. Didn't roll into HP or defense at all, which really sucks. This rolled all into HP pretty much, and a little bit into speed, which sucked as well. Actually, speed and crit chance, which sucked. I wish it went to health and attack, but oh well. Same thing here. This went pretty much all into speed and a little bit into crit chance and HP. That sucked as well. It might look like a really good piece, but not for ML Ken. And his boot, I mean, not even 60% attack boot, right? But it did have the HP and defense I needed, so put it on there for that. So yeah, he's very scuffed. He's on Sigurd's Scythe, but he's so squishy. He's so squishy. I definitely need to improve his defense and HP while maintaining his offensive stats. So there we go. Alright, and next off we have Arbiter Vildred, the unit that everyone complains about but doesn't really understand that he's actually not that good if you have the right counters to him, right? If you can counter him, like I built Lilibet just for him. He's never been an issue for me. Even before that, I had Melissa, I had other ways to deal with him, right? But anyway, that aside, he is plus 15 because he is still busted. He is still a really good unit. Everything is maxed out on him, and he is rocking some of my best gear. So, he's running almost 4,000 attack, 1,000 defense, which is actually pretty good for a thief. 9,500 HP, which helps him survive quite a bit, especially with his artifact, which I'll get into in a second. His crit rate is low, but as you can see, I haven't tier 90'd a lot of his pieces. The only one I tier 90'd was his ring right here, which was worth going for. But other than that, I mean, he hasn't really seen his optimal performance yet. I'm still trying to get better pieces to replace his helmet, to replace his boots, and all that stuff. But he is also running 277% crit damage, which is very solid, and he's running Moonlight Dreamblade. So, Moonlight Dreamblade, coupled with his defense and his HP as of right now, actually makes him quite tanky. So this evasion is really, really good. It says only 20%, but I mean, come on, guys. Elbrus is 20%, right? And you know how much that thing procs. So, Moonlight Dreamblade on him is what I go for. I could use Alexa's Basket. I did used to, but now I'm finding Moonlight Dreamblade is much more consistent at keeping Arbiter Vildred alive, and so that he can live more turns to deal more damage, rather than hoping for a greater attack buff and then doing a one-turn burst with Vildred and then losing him, right? Because people in RTA now have counters for him, right? Like ammo haste and all those other things that you see. So if they're able to kill him really quickly, well, you're basically down a unit for the rest of the fight. So Moonlight Dreamblade helps keep him alive, which helps him deal more damage. Alright, so there we go. That's Arbiter Vildred. And oh, by the way, he is on a 202 speed. He is going to be faster once I get more things upgraded to tier 90. But as of right now, it works just fine. Okay, next off, we have one of my other favorite units in the game, Crescent Moon Rin. And oh my god, her buff is absolutely amazing. Especially because that stun and the cooldown is so good for this S2 here. I don't have a Molad because she doesn't really deal damage. She only needs the Molads in her S3 for the -1 cooldown. So moving on here, she is self-imprinted for effectiveness, for a very good amount of effectiveness actually. And if we look here, she's rocking 1,000 defense, almost 16,000 HP, 238 speed, and she's running 115% effectiveness. So she is very, very solid. Now, here's the thing about her. I like to stack, as you can see, like HP on her, right? Mostly because 100-something effectiveness is already fine. You don't really need to go and strip healers. Like if they're running a DN and you want her buffs, you're probably not going to try to strip the DN. You're probably going to go after a DPS that's buffed, because not only are you preventing them from getting the attack buff or the mitigation that protects them, you're also going to have an easier time stripping them because they're going to have lower effect resistance, right? So she doesn't need a ton of effectiveness like Dizzy if you're trying to debuff healers and stuff. Here, you can just, you can get away with about 100-something effectiveness. She's running RNL because I like this with her S2. It grants her so many turns for the cooldowns on this that you're going to be able to keep stripping buffs, stealing them, and also having the potential chance to stun units, which is very strong. So Crescent Moon Rin is a fantastic support unit, especially for RTA. I like her at a very fast speed, so she can go first, strip someone's buffs, like strip someone's immunity, give your team immunity with her S3, and then you can, cripple that unit, you can debuff that unit, whatever you need to do, and then go from there. If you do strip a buff with her S3, you can go into an S2. So basically, if she goes fast, if you build her fast, you can strip a unit's immunity, stun that unit, and then on your next turn, you can just keep popping off. If RNL procs too, then oh my god, are you in business, right? So she's a very solid unit. Alright, so moving on here, we have Challenger Dominiel. So Challenger Dominiel here, not self-imprinted, but has the crit chance imprint for her teammates, just to help them out a little bit if they don't have 100% crit chance on their own. And yeah, so she is plus 15 because she was my first ML, I believe, yeah, she was my first Moonlight unit I pulled, I think. So to honor her, plus 15 to her, and she is rocking some pretty solid stats, I gotta say. So 3,000 attack might seem low, but that's because she's running a speed boot. Now, she has 1,000 defense, almost 10,000 HP, 144 speed, which is important, and I'll get to that in a bit. 83% crit chance. Now, you might be wondering, whoa, Azallea, you don't need that much crit chance. Her S3 gives her the crit chance buff, right? So you don't need that. I do like the crit chance because if she is stripped, or if she is unable to be buffed because of Basars and things like that, that always outspeed my Lidica, then this is going to be really good because it ensures that you can still get that crit that you need to get the kill to keep going with your cleaves. Crit damage is 340, which is very, very solid, and she's of course running Tagahel's Ancient Book for the souls. Now, yes, it's not at it's not fully maxed, but the thing is, I get the souls from Lidica, and I get the souls from Seadom's S3. So it is still going to give her 20 souls so she can soul burn immediately and just pop somebody out of existence, right? And as you can see, she is running Speed Boot here on her boots. So she's on an offset. She's only on a crit damage set, and then the other pieces are just ones that have good attack and good crit damage, right? So that's pretty much the only reason I picked those pieces. And yeah, she's very solid. Pretty much everyone knows what she does by now. She's almost as wanted as Oxlots, which, by the way, I don't have, so that's kind of sad. But at least I have Seadom, so she's really good. Alright, moving on here, we have Champion Zerato. So I finally just started playing Abyss again, and I got the 88 life piece sets. I just don't have the gold to upgrade them right now. But Champion Zerato is finally SSS imprinted, and he's on an imprint release. I should do a concentrate if I am trying to bring him into like PvP, but as of right now, he works really well with this release because I do use him in PvE most of the time, and he's really good for supporting my teammates. So here we go, going to his stats here, 3,100 attack, 1,000 defense, 14,000 plus HP, and very slow at 130 speed, but it's okay because he does get a lot of counters whenever he's debuffed. His crit chance is alright for a bruiser, and his crit damage is quite low, but as you can tell, I mean, it's not really necessary for him in terms of damage. He's mostly here as a support unit. I do want to build him to be better, and it's mostly because these lifesteal pieces here don't have any crit damage substats, so it's kind of hard to get crit damage on him with just the ring and neck. Alright, he is running Ayla Violin at a plus 30, so it maximizes his chance to debuff or dispel buffs from the enemy, which is good because of how much he counterattacks. So he's really good in PvE against like Azumanic and things like that, where you can pretty much solo those bosses because of his mechanics. Very solid unit. I do want to upgrade him. He is one of my future projects that I want to work on. His Molagoras are actually not that great. Obviously, you need a 100% chance on his S2, but I got the -1 cooldown and the effect chance on his S3, but that's pretty much it. I do want to max Mola him, though. He is one of those targets that I do want to max Mola because he is so, so good, and he deserves it. Alright, so there we go. That's Champion Zerato, and those are all my fully awakened units. Moving on, we have my Tamarinne here, or Tamarinne. Tamarinne is on a plus 8 Mola, so obviously you need that 50% combat readiness boost on her S2, and you need that -1 turn cooldown on her idle form. Now, here we go, looking at her stats here, she's pretty solid, especially since I've pretty much just scrapped together her gear. I'll go over to the substats here, but she's running 1,200 defense, 16,000 HP, and 211 speed. So she is 11 speed slower than my Iseria, which is good. It means that she's never going to be faster than her accidentally. And she's running 50% effect resistance, but because she's more of an offensive healer, I use her more on the offensive side, where I just want to go ahead and cleave things down. The effect resistance doesn't come into effect too much, and she's on immunity, so it doesn't really matter in the long run. Now, she is on Wondrous Potion Vial because the fact that she is low on effect resistance, so if she does get stunned or anything, and that's the only debuff that I have on my team, then she's able to cleanse herself and then still keep going from there. Pretty much the main purpose of that. She doesn't really, I mean, some people like to run Magaraha's Tome and stuff, but I think Potion Vial is just much safer to go for, especially if you're using her in a PvP setting. Alright, so moving on next, Tamarinne, I mean, pretty straightforward, right, as a healer. Next we have Lilibet, who is absolutely bonkers. Okay, so I know in my first showcase video of her, she didn't do that well, right, because apparently 96% crit chance is 50-50. So anyway, going here with her S1 and S2, nothing is Mola'd. I don't have the Mola for it. I do want to plus 15 her. She is one of my favorite units in the game. But I do have her S3 max Mola'd because you got to kill those Arbies, man. Got to kill those Arbies with Extinction. So she's very good in that regard for doing pretty much that, inflicting Extinction and making sure the opponent can't do stuff. Can't revive and do shenanigans. So looking here, she's running a plus 15 portrait. I don't I don't usually need the plus 30 portrait on her because Arby's so squishy and things like that. That her targets are usually so squishy that I don't need the plus 30. So until I get more gold, she's pretty much going to be sitting on a plus 15 portrait. Now, she does have her exclusive equipment, which gives her a nice crit chance boost, and it increases damage dealt with her S3. It might be overkill for some people, but for me, because she's not rocking the best gear in terms of damage stats, this 10% damage is actually pretty good. It actually helps mitigate some of the Aureus damage absorption, so that's kind of nice in that regard. Okay, so moving on here, we have her substats. I mean, mostly stacking attack, crit chance, crit damage. I highly recommend you get 100% crit chance on her, just so that she ensures the kill on Arbiter Vildred. Now, you might notice, hey, she's on attack boots, but she's still rocking 160-something speed. And yeah, you're right. She's on a speed set. She's actually quite independent. I don't need to bring her with like a crimson armor or anything. She can kind of just do her own thing. Same thing with Lidica, right? If I bring Lidica with Lilibet and Cdom, I mean, she pretty much does fine there too. So, you know, you can lower the speed a bit if you just want to purely use her with something like Oxlots and stuff, but as she stands right now, she's pretty independent. So I can bring her into RTAs against like Arbiter Vildreds, and she'll do fine, right? Especially with Ruele as like a backup revive, just in case they focus her down too quick. But yeah, she's definitely been super useful for me in Guild Wars if you guys have been watching those videos. Alright, next off we have my Faithless Lidica. Now she has just been stuck, right? Poor Faithless Lidica. She's been stuck because I cannot get a speed set necklace with crit chance main stat with speed subs that roll into speed. So I am chasing that speed necklace, and that's where all my gold has been going. Every time I get Wyvern materials, just try to get that crit chance speed set necklace. But she is on, actually, she has the plus 10% extra effect chance down here, so 75% chance to blind. She is at 100% chance here on her S2, and her S3 is on the -1 cooldown. So I pretty much just skimped out on all the extra damage molas on her because she doesn't need it. Got all the debuffs and like kind of important molas onto her. Now, you're probably wondering, well, hey, speaking of no damage, why is her attack so high? Well, her attack's high because we'll get to her ring in a second. But she is rocking 1,100 defense, which is pretty solid with 11,000 HP. And also 257 speed. Now that's slow. Some of you guys might be wondering, well, how is that slow? That's insane. It's slow because I keep getting outsped by Bassars, so it's not fast enough. So I do want to get her above 260 something speed. I can get her to around 265 if I can replace this cursed necklace, right? If I can just get this necklace to be a speed set, it'd be fantastic. But still hunting for that right now for the correct substats and everything like that, so it might be a while. But you can notice that her effectiveness is quite low. That's because she's not on an effectiveness ring. She's on an attack percent ring because it has speed. That's pretty much the only reason, is because it has speed. Now, I do gotta say, even though she only has 33% effectiveness, she does strip a lot of units. So I might not actually aim for an effectiveness ring. I might just go for like a defense or an HP ring if I can, just to increase her survivability, because the longer she survives, the worse it is for the opponent, right? It's kind of like Cerise, right? She's not a one-burst hero. She's actually really good because she cycles so fast. She can blind so many people, and she kind of gives you really good control over the game. She's actually better the longer she survives. So I do want to give her like an HP or a defense ring here if I can get one with good substats, but we're going to have to see in the future. But yeah, she does need 100% crit chance in order for her to get that her bonus effects. So that's why that's there. And yeah, so yeah, a critical hit grants all allies skill nullifier 1. So that's the reason for that. She is quite stat hungry, but in terms of she needs a lot of speed. She might need defense and HP to survive, and she's going to need that crit chance as well. And effectiveness if you're aiming for that too. But if I can get her to around 70% effectiveness, I think I'll be happy. But as of right now, she works, and I mean, you guys see for yourselves in Guild War, right? She's a very, very good hero. Alright, next off we have nobody else actually. All these units are pretty much on nothing, right? They're just holding spare gear. I do want to go and touch on this though. Taranor Guard. So he's a 5-star. Fully awakened though, SSS self-imprinted for crit chance, and plus 10 Stigmud for his S1 and S2, but that's mostly because I use him for Wyvern. His stats don't look very good, I know, but he is on a plus 30 Daydream Joker, which is very, very nice. The Daydream Joker is really, really strong in terms of he can deal upwards of like 20k damage per hit with this Daydream Joker if the Wyvern's defense broken, and he's pretty much just there for that, defense breaking the Wyvern. So there's that, if you guys want a reference for what I use. He is very low investment, just running literal spare gear. And I think I had one more unit, right, oh, there we go, aha, Sinful Angelica, so she's 5-star. So, here's the thing, she doesn't really need to be 6-starred, because of her immortality on her S3, which, by the way, only needs 1 Mola, so I just did that. Now, the thing with her is that she's rocking 190-something speed. As you can tell, her gear isn't the best. She's on a bunch of spare gear, just whatever I wasn't using on other units at the moment in my main squads, she kind of holds. But I haven't really tested her too much yet, but in theory, she should be pretty decent in terms of if Lidica pushes her up, she goes, stops people from reviving, and then my cleaver will come in afterwards and just cleave everything. So that's the theory behind it. She's not fully built here, but if you just want a rough estimate of like what stats might look like if you use her as a 5-star, these are usable stats. I just need the extra 5 speed if I had a better boot, and that's pretty much it. She has a little bit of effect resistance, so she does get stripped by like random things, but you really shouldn't be bringing her against strippers like Bassar and stuff anyway, so you know, should be fine. She's also on immunity as well, which is good, but yeah, I do use her in the state. I just don't use her in Guild Wars because Lilibet does the job in terms of killing Vildreds. But yeah, that should be just about it. As you can see here, I have a bunch of units that have not built because, yeah. So, anyway, let's go back up here. Let's end on, let's end on Kluri this time, right? All right, there we go, Falconer Kluri. Alright guys, so there we have it. That's a long video. My throat is absolutely dying, but thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, subscribe for more Epic 7 content, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, take care.